And you are listening to On the Record with Tiffany. And I have our Bexar County District Attorney, Joe Gonzales, with me. How are you doing, Mr. Gonzales?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm having a great time.
I told you it wasn't going to be that bad. So next, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between you at the district attorney's office and law enforcement, because a lot of people seem to just intertwine the two. They think it's the same thing. So is it the same thing?
No, it's not. And that's actually a very good question, because a lot of people will clump us together. They're two different agencies. The best way I can describe it to those who have had the opportunity to see a show called Law and Order, at the very beginning, there's a segment where they...
Now, you're not Ice-T, are you?
No. Not at all. But I do watch them a lot, because it's one of my favorite shows, because it is so accurate in its depiction of what we do. At the beginning, they talk about there are two different agencies. One are the police that investigate crimes, and then the other part are the prosecutors who prosecute individuals accused of crime. But they're two different agencies. One is not employed by the other. For example, here in Bexar County, I don't have any control over what SAPD does or the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. They investigate, they make arrests, then they file the cases with us. Likewise, once they make the decision to bring a case to us, then we make the call in terms of which cases to prepare to present to a grand jury. We make the decisions about which cases to prosecute or not. And so they're very different offices, very different agencies. And I can understand why people would be confused. But I say all the time that we have to keep a very clear line between the two. And one of the topics that I'm talking about recently is because everything that has occurred since the tragic event involving Mr. Floyd and the Minnesota Police Department. Everyone across the country is talking about defunding the police or disbanding the police, and it means different things to different people. And what I've said is we obviously need law enforcement. We need the police. Right. We need to be able to keep an ordered society.
Because when my listeners hear that, they hear abolish the police, and that's just not something that we even want to consider. We need law enforcement. 99% of law enforcement is good. They're not doing what those officers did to George Floyd. You know, they're as appalled as the rest of the country is by what we saw there.
Absolutely. As I'm sitting here in your beautiful studio, I look out and see the highway, and imagine if everybody that we see on the road decided they wanted to travel at speeds of 100 miles an hour or more. Can you imagine how that would endanger our lives? Can you imagine if nobody wore seatbelts, so that when they had accidents, people would be flying out the windows? So we have to have laws in an ordered society.
And we have to have people to enforce those laws.
Right, exactly. And so I do think the first step is to recognize that there is, and there has been, again, in areas like law enforcement and the courts, systemic racism. We need to recognize that, but we need to not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
We need to be able to recognize that we can do better, but we need to work within the system. And so one of those ways we can do that is to figure what we can do to identify that and then do better. And I say all the time, improving training goes a long way. Really being able to educate not only our law enforcement, but our prosecutors about a concept called implicit bias, where you may not recognize that you may possess that kind of bias. So that certainly is important. But I do think it's important that we come together, that we work together, and that we recognize that we can do better in the way that we do our jobs.
And in the way that we interact with one another. I mean, every time I see this, I think, gosh, we can come to a middle ground here and fix this. I know people's hearts are right and they want to fix it. Uh, Incendiary comments and throwing hand grenades at one another isn't gonna do that. you know. But like you said, that's exactly what we need. We need a way to come together. And every time I look at our beautiful majority minority city, I know we can be leaders in showing that how that can be done.
You're absolutely right. And again, Tiffany, thank you so much for inviting me to come out here and visit with you, because one of the challenges for me is to be able to talk out in the community about the things that we've been doing. Even though I've been a lawyer for 30 years, I've only had this job as the elected DA for about a year and a half. But we've been doing a lot of good work in the DA's office that maybe a lot of people don't hear about. And so that's the challenge for me to come out and talk about the things that we've been doing.
And this is a rough 18 months for you to have taken on this job, man. I mean, I'm thankful to you for sticking with it and not just throwing in the towel. You've dealt with the pandemic, social uprising, all kinds of things going on, and still maintain the integrity of the office.
Well, thank you for saying that. We're trying to do the right thing. We're not going to make everybody happy, and we get that. I understand that, but the best I can hope to accomplish is to be able to talk with people like yourselves, to be able to talk with the community and explain what we're doing. For example, I'd like to be able to talk to you for a minute, if I could, about what I think is our own version of police reform that we brought to the office, and that is that before, under prior administrations, members of law enforcement might file a case, for example, involving an officer-involved shooting, and that elected DA make a decision for him or herself that it was, for example, a justified shooting, and just clear that officer and be done with it. Well, we don't do that in our office. I decided, again, remember, I spent a long time as a defense lawyer, so I've seen both sides. I believe in the justice system because of the importance of having a jury, not only a grand jury that reviews probable cause to decide whether or not to indict an individual, but the jury system that decides guilt or innocence. So what I decided early on was that we were going to develop different levels of reviewing these officer-involved shootings. We have 3 or 4 different levels where we review these kinds of cases. And then even in cases where there may be a close call, we take everything to the grand jury. We let the citizens of Bexar County decide whether or not the officer committed a crime or whether or not he was justified in using deadly force. So that's one of the things that I'm proudest of, is that we're trying to bring transparency to the office. We're trying to let the citizens make the ultimate decisions.
And if I understand correctly, you did that 18 months ago. You started that when you first took office, when you first took the position. You began to review that well before the George Floyd murder.
That's correct. We did that. We established that very early on our administration last year. That's correct. Because we saw that there was a need to do that, because, again, we wanted to make sure we had some transparency. We wanted to make sure we had enough layers of review so that we could explain to the victims of crime, those people that were left behind, to deal with the unfortunate circumstance when there was a shooting involving an officer, that we were trying to do the right thing with regard to those cases.
Because I think we discussed before that you really have had a heart for all of the victims of officer-involved shootings. That maybe there needed to be some levels of accountability and just scrutiny when you're looking at cases like that.
Well, that's right. And that's what we've tried to do. Even on cases that were decided before I got here, we've continued to review them to make sure that the right decision was made. And I'll always keep an open mind with regard to those cases.
And I thank you for that, because, that's our law enforcement, and all law enforcement and the levels of scrutiny that's placed there. That's important. It's important for every citizen that lives in this city and in the country. So when we have district attorneys who are setting the bar, and setting the bar high, that's important. We need that, because that probably should have been done 20 years ago. But it took Joe Gonzales coming in and deciding, you know what, whether this is easy or difficult, I'm going to do it. I know this is a difficult topic, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I thank you for that, because we need more people who are willing to take on the hard subjects when nobody's looking at them, because that was before anybody was paying attention to this. And it shouldn't take a knee to someone's neck to get us to pay attention to something as important as this. And it didn't for you. You did that before something terrible happened. So thank you for caring about our community and all citizens in our community, especially the poor, because we have 140 million poor people in the United States, and they're not being seen or heard. So you're listening to On the Record with Tiffany, and my special guest, our district attorney, Joe Gonzales. So come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what the district attorney's office is doing to improve your life.